The Development Corporation, Clinton County, New York. Just 45 minutes from Montreal awaits prime, shovel-ready or existing industrial sites, a strong workforce, and ample financing. Discover the possibilities.
Recreation, transportation, and education, and how they relate to improving the community and quality of life here in our region. This forum tonight will ask the candidates to share their thoughts and ideas on these issues as they relate to the vitality and the economic development of Plattsburgh. We're going to have the candidates introduce themselves in just a moment. We are handing out cards and pens. If you picked them up, they're on the table outside. We're asking you in the audience to fill out questions if you would like and send them to the outside rows. Our friends with the League of Women Voters are going to pick them up, they're going to vet them, they're going to get them to me, and we are going to try to get as many of your questions to the candidates tonight as we can. We are scheduled to go 90 minutes. We may take a 5-minute break in the middle around 8 o'clock, but we really want to try to get to as many of your questions as we can. Why don't we have the gentlemen, our candidates, come out and get in position, and then we'll introduce our panel. Gentlemen, come on out. Thank you for being here. The candidates are going to be questioned by our panel of journalists that include Pat Bradley with WAMC Northeast Public Radio, Joe LaTemplio, who is the City Hall and City Government reporter for the Plattsburgh Press-Republican, and since we are on the campus of Plattsburgh State University and we have 3 distinguished Plattsburgh State alumni on the stage with us tonight, we have also asked Brian Molagowski to join us. He is the news editor of the college's award-winning newspaper, Cardinal Points. We'll go over the ground rules in just a moment, but why don't we begin by welcoming the candidates and asking them to tell us a little bit about themselves. We're going to go in alphabetical order. Jim Callan.
Thank you, Tom. I'm Jim Callan. I'm the current city councilor from Ward 4. I've been on the council about 6.5 years now, and in the last 6 years I have been the mayor pro tem, and I retired from a long career in the state's public workforce and employment system, and I'm very happy to be here tonight and looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Jim. Chris Rosenquist.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone, and thank you for our panelists and moderators. Specifically, thank you for everybody here that you've taken your time and you're giving your attention to us up here. I appreciate you taking the opportunity to become informed voters. I am a Plattsburgh native, called Plattsburgh home for 31 years, educated here, 2-year degree from Clinton Community College, 4-year degree from Plattsburgh State, and was also on the award-winning journalism team of the Cardinal Points at that time. Traveled around, made my career in technology, software development, technology management, hold a degree from the University of Washington and my MBA from the University of Washington, and I'm proud to call Plattsburgh home. And thanks to my wife, too. I have to say hi.
Thank you. Mark Tiffer.
Yes, my name is Mark Tiffer. I'm currently the City Councilor for Ward 2 in the City of Plattsburgh. I'd like to start off by thanking all of you for coming here. Thank you for putting on this forum. Thank you all for taking the time to become more informed and find out more about the economics of our community and ourselves. I'd like to start off by saying my family came here from Nicaragua. This was just a pit stop for them. They had an opportunity to go to Montreal, where some of our family was. And when they first arrived here, they saw something special in this community. They were welcomed with open arms. They were part of the family of this community. No one knew who they were, but yet they gave them opportunities. My father got a job here. We didn't know English when we first arrived here. Literacy volunteers opened their arms and came and volunteered at our home, so that we understood English, so we knew English, we were educated, we had an opportunity to make something of ourselves. And that really created something in me that wanted to give back. The opportunities that I was given in this community made me want to stay in this community, made me want to be part of that family and help others. So in terms of public service, before being on the City Council, I had an opportunity to be part of residency advocacy groups. So one of them was the Green Committee. That was something that was a volunteer group that identified issues and problems that we could solve as residents in the community. Then I was given an opportunity to be on the planning board. Again, this was something that I actively sought to give back to the community, make a difference, do something that's impactful in our community. And then from there, city council. So it's just a natural progression of me wanting to make something about this community, do something better, and really give back to the community that gave me a lot of opportunities. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, gentlemen. We'll now begin with the questions, since the idea of this forum is really to allow you ample opportunity to explain your ideas and visions. We'll be allowing a little longer for you to respond to questions, 3 minutes. At about 2:45, you're going to see the amber light there in the middle. It will turn from green to amber and then turn red at 3 minutes, and then we'll ask politely that you wrap up your answer as soon as you can, and then finish your thought and wrap it up if you would. Since this is a candidates forum and not a debate, there will be no rebuttals. We will begin with the questions from our panel. We do want to ask the audience, please hold your applause for the end of the candidates forum, if you would. We know you're pumped up and you're excited to be here, but if you would, save it for the very end. We are now going to start with the panel and their questions. Once again, fill out your cards. We've left the house lights up so that you can fill out your questions, get them to the end of the rows, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. But now, let's begin with the panel, and our first question tonight comes from Pat Pratt.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, gentlemen. For the first question, I think what I'm going to do is step back a few months to the spring when you all made your announcements that you were running for mayor. Mr. Tiffer, during your announcement for mayor, and I went back to the audio and checked this, during your announcement for mayor, you said we need to increase economic development and find new revenue streams and make Plattsburgh an economic powerhouse and a beacon for the North Country. Mr. Rosenquist, you said we're at a pivotal point where Plattsburgh can become the economic hub for upstate New York. We desperately need economic growth, and it's time to implement a vision. And in a phone conversation with you, Mr. Kalnan, you said if you can't manage the money first, none of the other good things can happen. So one thing I'm curious about in the intervening months, I would like to hear specifics of what are and how will your economic and community development plans be, and what you're going to do, how you will implement that vision for the city, and how much as mayor you will interact with all of the people, many of them sitting here tonight, that are the economic development organizers for the region.
And based on drawing straws, we start with Mr. Tiffany.
Sure. I think you had brought up a good point. One of the things that we need to do before we implement any plan, before we go on, there are 4 union contracts that are up. We need to solve and settle some of the long-term problems that our city is facing. We have to put our city in economic footing so that we can move on from there. Once those things are settled, and from the day I get in office, I will hire a coordinator, a community development coordinator, so that we can start working on creating a plan, a master plan, a vision for our community. Our community needs some kind of strategic goals, needs a set of plans, 5-year, 10-year plans, in order for us to start achieving things that we need to do. Some of the long-term issues that we're facing is, what do we do with the waterfront development? What do we do with downtown revitalization? Who do business owners go to in City Hall to find out what grant opportunities they have, what loan opportunities they have? We need a community development that is staffed adequately with someone that's knowledgeable and understands their role in the community. The second phase is commissioning a residency advocacy group that will come up with priority projects, create that master plan. We actually do have, in the mayor's tentative budget, we have money allocated to create that commission a report for a master plan. We have $50,000 allocated towards that. That's a start. We need to continue doing that. We need to actually make it a regional plan, identify all the issues that we have to solve, and work with the town of Plattsburgh, work with other municipalities to identify those mutual strategic goals that we have to achieve. That's how we achieve those things. It's by planning, and that's something we've been missing. I ran for mayor not because of an ego, because I thought I was the best leader. It's because we are missing that vision. We're missing that leadership that understands how important it is to plan. We've had 7 years without a plan. We have to change that. We have to start looking towards the future. Identify the different revenue sources. That's tourism. We have a captive audience in our airport and up Route 3. We have Canadians that come to our community to shop. They should be coming to the community for other things. We have a beautiful waterfront. They should be attracted to our waterfront. We should have things going on in our downtown that bring people regionally to our community. We shouldn't have to travel to Burlington to do things. We should have things in our backyard doing those things. And that starts with community development. That starts with a fully functioning community development office.
Thank you very much. Council.
Well, thank you, Pat. I firmly believe, I still believe exactly what I told you in the beginning, that the very first thing we have to do is to be sure that we deliver the essential city services at an affordable price. And if we lose sight of that, then no amount of other activity will solve the problems of the city. If our issue is that we are trying to attract more young people to live in our city, we have to be sure that they can afford to live here. If we're looking at trying to improve tourism, we have to be sure that we have businesses that can afford to operate to attract tourists. And so I firmly stand behind what I did say before. I have to agree with actually both of my opponents on the vision part of this question. I think that we are poised at this point for some very good things. But I want you to think back to what the situation was 7 years ago, when we had a negative fund balance, and we, over the course of the last several years, lost several $1 million in revenue, changes in the Falcon Seaboard pilot. Audit required us to more equitably deal with our water and sewer funds. We had unexpected expenditures for workmen's compensation and a number of other things. We got through all that. We got through all that without drastically raising the tax rate. Now, Mark is right. Part of that was at the expense of not settling contracts. That has to be done. There is no question of that. There has to be rational negotiations with all of our unions. I have to tell you that I'm proud of the endorsement that I got from the ASME union, not just because a union endorsed me, but because of the reasons that they stated for it, that they trusted me and that they thought that I was honest with them. And that's the kind of negotiation that we have to bring to the table. Now, once all that's done, I think we need to start to take a really strong look at how we invest our money in the future. There's only way that we're going to develop the kind of tourism and arts and cultural activities that we need to have the city. The city's role in the regional economy will be to be that economic hub, that service hub, the arts and culture hub. We need to develop that. When we have to do that in concert with business and with not-for-profit organizations. And I think it's critically important that we act as a catalyst and not a funder. To do that, I think we need to do a couple of things. One of them is the mayor is a member of the Regional Economic Development Council. Our current mayor has not been an active member of that council, and most state grants are coming to the regions through those councils. As mayor, I will be a very active member of that council, and I will help focus uh-oh, I've got to speed up to get through the red light now, to focus what the vision of the council is, as well as to prepare local groups and organizations, as well as the city, to access some of those grants. And I'll bet you I get back to this question a little bit later, too. So.
Don't let the lights just finish your thoughts. Mr. Rosenblatt.
Yeah, thank you, Pat, for asking that question. Yes, we all have a vision. We all have a vision, but what are the actual actions that go along with that, right? That's the big question. And I recently, if you've probably been following me on Facebook or my website, I just released a community and economic development plan, a comprehensive 9-page document that outlines not only the initiatives that I will take as the mayor, but also the actions that go along with those initiatives. That's exactly what we need. We need clear actions to take. The informed voter needs to know what actions the mayor is going to take. Yes, we have issues with union contracts. Those need to be settled. We have financial stability concerns and constraints that we need to also be managing for. But we also have a wealth of resources here. Let's use what we have. We have the longest freshwater beach in the U.S. We have a 100-car parking lot down next to our waterfront. We have a gem of a resource in the city marina. We have a train station that sits in the heart of our downtown. We have an international airport that's about to expand to twice its size. Let's use those resources for economic growth. Let's use those resources to attract people here. And my action plan clearly outlines how to do that. For example, arts and culture. Arts and culture are an economic driver for our region. How do we leverage that? As the mayor, you work with community groups to pave the way for their success. That's partnership. I talk a lot about partnerships. I talk a lot about community and grassroots efforts, and also municipalities, partnering with municipalities. As the mayor, that's my job, is to pave the way for those partnerships, is to pave the way for those grassroots community groups and those grassroots efforts to be successful and effective.
Thank you. This next question comes from Joe Lieutenant.
Thanks, Tom. There's been a lot of talk in this race so far about the Community Development Office and what you'd like to do. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about, first of all, the status of the office now and what exactly is there and how you would change it and utilize it, and how that could help expand the tax base. That's another thing that's been talked about a lot in this race, is expanding the tax base, which could be a difficult thing to do. I mean, the city's pretty much landlocked. So I'd like to know what specific ideas you have for opportunities to do that, and how exactly you would utilize the Community Development Office, and what's the status of it now?
And for this question, we begin with Mr. Kelly.
Well, let's start with the status. Right now, there is no distinct Community Development Office. There are no staff that are assigned to that full time. There are folks who are still continuing to do community development work in the Chamberlain's office, as well as in the Building Inspector's office. That will continue. And a lot of what they're doing actually is working off grants that are, processing grants and processing loan applications and providing some support for our Lake City Local Development Corporation. Those things need to continue. However, I don't think that we need to hire another person or 3 or 4 to run the Economic Development Office. I can remember one of the most distinct memories I had is when Imperial Paper Mill closed. We had a meeting to talk about how to recover from that, both for the employees as well as for the business aspect of that. And sitting there running the meeting was the director of the Development Corporation, a representative from Empire State Development, and the city's economic developer. They were all selling the same programs. Why were there 3 of them there? Why were we duplicating an effort? As we stand today, we have great partners. The Development Corp that I just mentioned actually provided a service for our Empire Zone at no cost when there was an Empire Zone. We need to continue those kinds of partnerships. We need to continue to work closely with the Chamber of Commerce. I would not hire a community development director because I think the economic developer for the city is the mayor of the city. I think that that's where we'll have the best bang for our buck. Now, would I like to add another person? Absolutely. But I'd like to add somebody who would be focused on events, who would be focused on the kinds of things that are being successfully done now. Things like 4th of July celebration, the city's involvement in Mayor's Cup, the city's involvement in the Battle of Plattsburgh, first weekends, and a host of other activities. I'd like to have somebody dedicated to supporting those kinds of activities so that we can let them grow. And that really, to me, is the key here. We shouldn't be doing a lot of things. We should be encouraging a lot of things. The first weekends is probably the best example. We've encouraged them to start small and have great success, because small success will grow, whereas large failures will die. And so we think that that's a really remarkable activity by a bunch of really motivated people. We need to support that. And one of the things that I want to do as mayor is I want to create a charitable giving opportunity, which I'm going to call Plattsburgh Proud. What I want to do is I want to be able to find a group like that needs $1,200 a year to buy insurance and use the bully pulpit of the mayor's office to find people who will donate to it. I want to continue to try to support activities like that and the Max Moore Treehouse again. Not directly any city money, but something that we should be using the mayor's office to help promote, to get it done, because it enhances the things that we've already done, in that case, the Saranac River Trail.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt.
The Community Development Office has been a focus point of my campaign, excuse me, in that the function of that office, as you mentioned, Joe, is to increase our tax base, meaning where do we find the available properties to build on? Where do we find the outside or internal investors in the city to invest into our city for growth? Where do we find the industries that we're going to attract to Plattsburgh using the resources that we have, both natural and skilled resources, to promote Plattsburgh and to grow in terms of living wage jobs? The Community Development Office in 2012, $100,000, over $100,000 was paid into that office. The last time a grant, according to city officials, a grant came out of that office was 2009. So where is the money going that is actually going to turn around and increase our tax base? The primary function of that office is to write grants. In my campaigning, I've traveled to regional municipalities, Saranac Lake, for example. Saranac Lake, over the last few years, have generated over $14 million out of their community development office. Now, that's a city half of the size, if not a quarter of the size, of the population of Plattsburgh, yet they're generating all this money. We are missing an opportunity in obtaining the grants that are available to us. We have a lot more resources to provide. We have a lot more growth to do. Yes, I hear a lot of the times we're landlocked. However, we have a gem of a waterfront that if we had a proper community development office, they would be finding the grants to start developing that. Yes, there are partnerships to be had, and that is primarily the mayor's job. As the mayor, I would be the CEO of Plattsburgh. And my job is to go out and build those partnerships, go out and find those investors and the opportunities for jobs to come into Plattsburgh. But it wouldn't be a long-term job for me to maintain ongoingly. It's something that we could get people in to Plattsburgh, hand them off, get them set up in the community development office, and get them going. Yes, there's a long-term relationship to be maintained by the mayor, and of course, that's my job too. But ongoingly, yes, the function of that office is to maintain and grow our tax base. That does include community events. That does include when we have a community group that's looking at building a project for Plattsburgh, a complete streets project, that they have a starting point. Where do they start? Come down to the community development office, ask some questions, we point you in the right direction. The opportunity for us that I would like to see is to really fulfill on the possibility of Plattsburgh, really fulfill on where we can go by creating an office, a central resource for investors, for job creators, for community groups, and that really is the function of the Community Development Office. Yes, there are funds in that office right now, according to the mayor's budget, for contract services, but really we need more. We need one full-time person, and we need somebody to do some contracting for grant writing.
Thank you. Mr. Tifford.
Yes, I think it's important for us to have a staffed community development office. You're right, you had talked about forging partnerships with the North Country Chamber of Commerce and the Development Corporation and other agencies, as well as the North Country Regional Economic Development Corporation. Those are things that the mayor has to do. Those are things that the mayor should be doing. Unfortunately, we've had a mayor who isn't interested in those things. He hasn't been doing those things. As mayor, I would absolutely be active, but that doesn't mean we don't need the community development coordinator. Since 2007, that's when the department got gutted. That's when the coordinator was fired, some clerical positions were laid off, as well as an accountant position. Since then, that's when we've seen the faucet turn off. We've had a lot of grant opportunities come into this region. But when we lost that coordinator, that's when it stopped. And I do have to answer one thing. He said that we have $100,000 going towards that department, and since 2009 we haven't received a grant. Well, that's not entirely true. There's been businesses downtown that have reaped the rewards of our revolving loan program. There's been a lot of businesses downtown that have utilized that. In fact, we got a Main Street grant to redo St. Charles Street. That was just last year. So that's not true. We are absolutely still getting grants. It's just a fraction of what we can have, and we should be getting more. The headlines, you see areas around us getting grants. The Plattsburgh International Airport, 3 grants in 1 week. Millions of dollars, they're out there. But we don't have a department that's seeking those opportunities, and we have to. It's an investment. You have to start weighing out, where you put your money. What is the investment and the return on the investment that you get? And putting that money towards a community development office, you're going to reap the rewards. Absolutely. It takes time, and you have to have a plan, and you have to have shovel-ready projects, and that's what we've been missing. We have to start thinking about the future, creating a vision, having someone working with those agencies and those departments in the state and federal level to get those opportunities to bring money into our community. Our taxpayers are overburdened. Too much of the projects fall on our homeowners. We have to be creative, find different revenue sources. We are almost landlocked. It's true. But there are other revenue sources. As I stated, tourism. We could be a community that utilizes that tourism that we have to bring in and offset some of those taxes. That's what we should be looking into. That's what our community development office needs to be doing. And that's why we need to hire a coordinator and have that office staffed.
Thank you, Mr. Tiffin. The next question comes from Brian Malongowski with Cardinal Points.
Thank you, Tom. Plattsburgh State is making a lot of strides recently to improve career development opportunities for students. And it's really been a focus. We have a new career development center, which has been going. We have a new fee. We have to pay for that center. And we have a brand new 5-year campus plan, which is really centered on student success in careers. So I'm just wondering, how can the Plattsburgh community kind of work with the school in helping solidify careers locally so that once by the time they graduate, they don't have to leave. They can stay here and form their careers here.
Great. I focus a lot of my plan on partnerships with SUNY. Why? Because SUNY, and we know SUNYs and SUNY schools are economic drivers of our region. Been to plenty of those presentations, both at Clinton Community College as well as Clarkson. Had an opportunity to go out there and to talk with some of the technology folks on their startup opportunities and as well as their emerging technologies. The opportunity for the City of Plattsburgh to partner with SUNY goes well beyond just students ripping signs out of the ground. That's an issue, that's an ongoing issue, and we want to continue to maintain that relationship, the town-gown relationship. But there's also partnerships to leverage the wealth of resources that SUNY has in terms of the Startup New York opportunities, as well as the leverage of, as well as the wealth of knowledge that comes out of our SUNY schools. Again, I'm one of those students that have come out of the SUNY school and didn't have an opportunity to work and had to move away for work. So partnering with SUNY, looking at what available opportunities we have in the city, either to engage students before they graduate, internships, as well as partnering with local businesses, small and large, for, again, talent retention and more internships for those students. The opportunity for me as the mayor is to go out, find those living wage jobs, those living wage industries that we can bring home. Investors are looking for opportunities to invest in the number 4 micropolitan for international investment. That's Plattsburgh. So my job, again, as the mayor, is to build these partnerships with SUNY, is to build the partnerships even with the town. If we don't have room to grow, the town does. So how can we leverage the town and our resources to combine forces? And that's good for the region. Same thing with other counties. The opportunity, again, is to partner and share services or find ways to engage SUNY students beyond just the norm. And it's an ongoing relationship. It's not just the first 3 weeks of the year when the students move into the city. It's ongoing. Every year we're going to have the same conversations about the town-gown issues. Every year we're going to have the same conversations about students leaving. And the opportunity for us is to engage with the students, find out what the skill gap is in our current business environment, and find opportunities to fill those gaps with the students that we have.
Sure. When I first started contemplating some of the policies that I would implement when I'm mayor, one of the things that stood out to me is the lack of opportunities for the college students to be engaged and a part of the community. So one thing that I really would like to do, and this would come from the mayor's office, is create a policy, a volunteer and career development policy. And in essence, we would identify internship opportunities throughout the city. We do have some internships, but we could have more. The college and the students are a resource to this community. They have expertise, they have energy, they have motivation, and they're creative. They could give a lot to our community, and it's a matter of engaging them and empowering them, making them be a part of the community. So identify all those opportunities for internships, not only publicly, but privately. So encourage our businesses to have internships, to expand their opportunities, and really give the college students an opportunity to network and be a part of the community. A lot of the problems that stem from our college, the students, or the perceived problems, is the fact that they're treated as transient. They're treated as not a part of this community. And we have to change that. We have to think of them as being a part of our community. Most of them are going to be here 4 to 5 years. How can they contribute to this community those 4 and 5 years? In fact, some of them are going to stay here. Some of them are going to decide that this is going to be their home. So we need to give them the opportunities and the skill set and those experiences so that they can be successful here while they're in school and afterwards, so that they want to continue being a part of this community. Our community does have jobs. It does, Route 3, a lot of jobs. It lacks career opportunities. When you're a young professional, when you graduate from this college, what opportunities do you have? Very little. We need to expand upon that. We need to use that student body, that expertise, that graduation of those students as resources. Companies need skilled workers. We have them. We need to attract the correct corporation, the correct companies, and the correct entrepreneurs, business investment, to use that skill set that we have now.
Thank you. Mr. Kelman.
Well, this is a pretty interesting question. We hear a lot about what we need to do. I'd like to point out that, there's a lot of things going on that maybe we're not all aware of. Over the course of my career, I've been involved with school-to-work activities that matched businesses with students in high schools. I've been involved in working with internships at both Clinton and SUNY Plattsburgh. And I've had the pleasure the last couple of years of joining President Ettling at their Community Service Awards. And if you don't think these students are out in our community, you should go to those awards. You should see the kinds of things, how many students are active in our community and that are already bringing some of the best ideas and some of the best talent that's out there. This isn't something that needs to be created. This is something that exists. The standard town gown issues over the last several years, the cooperation between the city and the college has grown to the point where the signs that are coming out of the ground, other types of vandalism have diminished to a point where it's almost not worth talking about. We've got a great relationship. Yeah, we need to make it better. Yeah, we need to make it grow. But my point is that you need to have somebody driving that train that knows where they're going, who's already been there, who isn't just saying this is a good idea, but I'm offering you someone who has the experience to actually make it happen, because I've made it happen in the past and I will continue to make it happen.
Fill out the cards, get your questions to the end. The League of Women Voters, they love vetting questions. So. Let's do one more round with our panel. Next question from Pat Bradley, and this will be going to Mr. Tiff.
One of what should be the gems of Plattsburgh is the waterfront. And having been around here for a long time, I remember when the base closed, there was all sorts of excitement about what could be done to open up to public use all of the lands along the waterfront from the base. We had the whole idea that we were going to have this huge hotel and conference center built in the downtown area. And, well, we do have a really nice parking lot right now. We have the rail yard, the railroad station down there, and we have the sewage treatment plant, which has and always will be probably a challenge for any sort of waterfront development. But what do you believe is viable for both public and private use and development? And what sustainable and future waterfront plans have you actually crafted as you look to being the mayor?
Sure, very, very good questions. I think one of the things before I answer that question, I think it's really important to point out that before we do any plans, before we move on, it's important for us to understand that access to the waterfront is critical. We don't want to limit the access to our residents to that waterfront. We have such little waterfront that is public land that it's very important for us to understand that our public needs access to that waterfront. We can't alienate that parkland and make it into just a private enterprise. We have to keep that access open and in fact encourage more access to open up. And specifically talking about Dock Street Landing, which is that area where the water treatment plant is. We also have MLD there. And MLD is also another eyesore on our waterfront. We have to identify a new location for MLD and even possibly Public Works. Public Works is outside the city of Plattsburgh. We're paying taxes on for Public Works. We're paying utilities for Public Works. Perhaps there's a time for us to identify a new location for a co-Public Works and MLD facility. That's going to be efficient. It's going to be utilizing two departments and having a new facility, state-of-the-art facility that's efficient. And we don't have to pay taxes to the town of Plattsburgh. We don't have to pay utilities to NYSEG. And that's going to clean up our waterfront. That's going to give us an opportunity to create something there. And in fact, I have delved into that thought. And in fact, Stephen Peters, the recreation director for the city of Plattsburgh, he has identified the fact that our Crate Civic Center is at capacity. We're using it almost 99% of the time, but yet we're barely breaking even. Because the location of it and because of the size of the facility, we're limited on what we can do. We can't go any further, but there are opportunities. So he has suggested, and I completely support it, creating a new facility, creating a new city center in the heart of our city on Dock Street Landing, making it a multi-use, multi-purpose facility that can hold conventions, can hold trade shows, can hold multiple fields so that we can have regional events. We can hold soccer tournaments. We can hold indoor football tournaments. We can create a destination, a reason for people to go down there. One of the problems that Dan Stewart had on his hotel proposal is he thought he could build the hotel without first creating the destination. You need to create the reason for the hotel to be there. You have to create that destination. And that's what we needed to do. We needed to create a reason for people to go there, an attraction, a year-round attraction. Our winters are much longer than our summers. We can't just have a seasonal waterfront. It needs to be year-round. So creating that convention center, creating that multi-purpose facility in the heart of our downtown will revitalize. It'll be the catalyst of the revitalization of our downtown, and it will bring a hotel to that location.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Mark and I serve on the same committee of the Common Council this year, and one of the things that we've discussed at length is the ideas that he just presented, and he presented them as we discussed them. And I think it's important that we do make better use of that downtown area. Regarding the sewage treatment plant, as long as that's in your question, I'm going to address that somewhat. We also have had some discussions about how we can disguise the sewage treatment plant. And you would be surprised of the number of buildings in major cities where there's a sewage treatment plant in the basement and you never knew it. That can happen here in Plattsburgh as well. Practically speaking, that's moving it anywhere else is a regulatory and a very expensive proposition that I think is well beyond us. But making sure that it doesn't inhibit the development of the rest of the area is something that I think is within reach. So I agree with what Mark said about trying to make this area a destination. And over the last couple of years, you know, with the cooperation of DEC, you know, we've expanded the boat launch opportunities down there. We've gotten some more canoe trail signage, and we've become part of a couple of other recreational trails. We need to get our Saranac River Trail to that point. We need to connect it to the north as well from the waterfront area. I mean, there are some things that we need to do that are simple and inexpensive, and there are things that we need to do that are expensive and complicated. But we need to do them all, because this is exactly the kind of development that we need to have downtown. We need to do the kinds of things that will bring people from the water to come into downtown, and not just the immediate waterfront area, but into the actual city downtown. And we need, as Mark has pointed out, to have a place for the people who are in the town to get to the waterfront. And there's a unique opportunity down there, and I think that we can do that really without doing anything environmentally unsound, without disrupting the operation of any of our departments, and I think that that's exactly the kind of development we need there. As to putting the Public Works and Municipal Lighting Department together, marvelous idea. We're spending about $200,000 a year to keep the Public Works building where it is. Half of it's a great building, the other half's not so good. You know, we should really be looking at some spots, and there are some isolated spots within the city where it could happen. We've researched a few of them, and that would be one of the priorities that I would want to act on. I have some similar ideas about maybe some other consolidations, but those are going to depend on some decisions made by others, so I'll pass on those at this point. But I think it's important to really maximize our impact. A four-season recreational area in that downtown area would be a great boon to tourism and to the entire downtown.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Pat. The part of the thinking is that we need to become some destination. We are a destination. We already are a destination. We have Canadians coming down in droves. I've seen more Canadian bikers and motorcyclists and visitors and tourists come into our beautiful city over this summer than I have ever seen. So we are a destination, but how are we keeping them here? How are we retaining them for a day or 2 days, or how are we entertaining them? That's the focus. We got to look out and say, we already have these folks here. How do we keep them? What kind of events are we having that they're coming to our city, whether it be downtown or somewhere else in our city, and enjoying and spending money? The other part of it is, you mentioned waterfront, and the only piece of waterfront that comes into question is the one on Dock Street. We have the old base marina. We have Dock Street Marina. We have Wilcox Dock. It's state-owned, but we're still stewards of that. And we have the City Beach. We have to look at this in a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture involved, which would have us move our region forward with velocity, versus looking at the little bit of here that we can only do so much with. Oh, there's only 200 feet of waterfront, so what are you supposed to do with that? No, it's 200 feet of waterfront in the heart of our downtown, in a city that has the longest freshwater beach in the US. So there's an opportunity to look at the bigger picture here, and then leverage that as a resource for attracting people. I'm very much of a proponent of a city-managed marina. You see municipalities of our size, greater and smaller, managing their own marina. Why can't we? Why can't we? Why are we looking at an opportunity to sell or lease our marina for a fraction of what we think it's worth? At the very least, why don't we try it? What are we going to lose? What would we lose if we try to manage our own marina using examples of success beyond that we know how to do? Bring somebody in. The other thing is, it's not just you say waterfront, but we have a river that runs through our city as well. You know, I've talked to Mr. Peters, I've talked to Mr. Hogel about building and creating a whitewater park with fishing pools and riverfront access and whitewater features. Then you go to the town and you partner with the town and you say, hey, look, let's build a permitting system that you can charge people to use this. Revenue generation right there. It's very small cost of entry into having people come into our city using our waterfront, all of our waterfront. Vision to Action has put together, Vision to Action, Adirondack Coast Visitor Bureau have put together a master plan for our city beach. Is it the most ideal situation? I don't know, probably not. If it's all going to be privately owned, I know that there's park issues, there's historic heritage issues there as well, but it's an opportunity for us to look at that as a blueprint to move things forward. But again, it's a bigger picture here. It's on fulfilling what's possible for Plattsburgh, not just this little piece of tiny land that we have in our downtown.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question comes from Joe Temple, and it's the owner of the calendar.
Thank you. This issue's been talked about a little bit this year. The idea has been floated about exploring the possibility of converting the city from a strong mayor government to a city manager form of government. So very simply, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the city manager form of government idea, pros and cons.
Very simply, huh? Well, it's a complex question, but I think it can be answered simply. The charter that governs the city is really the contract between the citizens and its government. And if a substantial number of citizens want a strong mayor, or they want a city manager type of management, I'd be happy to serve in either. I don't really have a dog in this race. But I want you to think about the advantages of each. On the one hand, city manager would give us some long-term, normally some very long-term stability in things like employee relations. It would give us a very strong continuity in planning because there would be somebody who would not be coming and going with the whims of political winds. That's a very good thing. But it's not cheap because you also have to, if you're going to get somebody of quality, you're going to have to pay them. And it's no less political than the situation we're in now. So I can see that either one has its advantages, either one has its faults, and I'd be happy to work under either one. I really can see the advantages of both, and it just doesn't matter because I think the policy level decisions, the things that really set the standard, it's a lot like visioning. I mean, that's really what the city council should be doing is figuring out what's the long-term vision for the city and what's our 3-year piece of it. That's the action part of vision to action. The city council should sit down and say, look, we've got an idea of where we're going. What are we going to do in the next 3 years to get us there? Because frankly, we might not be here, 4 years from now. So we'll hand it off to somebody else. In either situation, I think that's the role of the council. And I think it's a big part of what the mayor does now, and it would be an even bigger part of what the mayor would do if we were in a city manager type organization.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenquist.
I do plan on being here for a long term, and I plan in my economic and community development plan outlines both a 10, 20-year plan as well as the short-term gains that we can get there. As far as a community or city manager role, it's worth exploring. It's worth exploring. From a business perspective, I'll tell you that I wouldn't want somebody coming into my business not knowing how to run my own company and then being the complete steward of managing all the bits and pieces. It's worth exploring, but there is the issue, does the electorate want it? Let's put it to the electorate. Is that something worth exploring? If they say no, then no. If they say yes, then put forth the commission to do the research. But it's got to be done properly. It's got to be done properly. It's got to be done independently, nonpartisan, and with people who are committed to a long-term and a long-term research cycle in terms of how digging down deep. We have our charter is 111 years old. Before we even get to the point of deciding a city manager, we should probably figure out how to update our charter. That's what anybody would do. I mean, like, why would you try to build on top of something that's so old? So the first thing that we would have to do is figure out an opportunity for revising our city charter to be up to date. Then find the opportunity based on the electorate. Do they want to explore a city manager role? I'll tell you, from my business background, and I'm quite successful at business, and from my MBA, it makes sense. It makes sense. That doesn't necessarily mean then the mayor becomes some figurehead. Again, I point down to Saranac Lake where they do have a town or a village supervisor and a mayor who happens to be our former mayor, Clyde Rabideau. Still, Clyde does a lot of great work down there. As you all read in the paper. Still focused on community development, still focused on events and building Saranac Lake, still focused on partnerships with the region. Then the town supervisor supervises, implements the vision put forth by the Common Council and the mayor. Again, it makes sense. Is it something that would fit here? Again, that's what the commission would have to determine. And I'm 100% in support of putting it to the electorate, saying, do you want something like this? And then doing the research on top of that.
Thank you. Mr. Tiffer.
Yes. Chris had pointed out something that is something worth looking into. Updating our city charter, that is absolutely important. But beyond that, in terms of city manager, I'm a public servant. If the residents of our community want to explore changing the way that our city functions, then it's up to them, absolutely. If they want to vote and change that, then I believe that it's their right to do that. However, I must say, I'm a bit apprehensive at this change, and a lot of the problems that exist in our city isn't because we don't have qualified individuals. It isn't because we don't have a city manager overseeing this. There are a lot of other factors that are involved with our problems that exist in our city. So I think oftentimes the city manager approach is seen as a cure-all, as something that's going to solve all of our problems, without understanding that this is going to be a six-figure salary. This is more than likely going to come, this individual is not going to come from our area. We don't have MBAs in economic development. We don't have MBAs in business administration. It's going to have to come from someone else. So we're going to be hiring this individual that isn't familiar with our area. I have a problem with that, absolutely. What's their commitment level to this area? They're going to have to sign a long-term contract. They're not going to be accountable to the voters of our city. So if this person isn't leading our city in the right direction, we have to pay out that contract. In fact, if you look it up in the news, there are many communities facing that. They're paying 3 contracts from former city managers and still having to pay another city manager because of scandals, because of political appointments, because of unqualified individuals that were appointed to this position. This is an appointment. You know, the council and the mayor would be appointing this individual. How is that not political? Of course it'd be political. In fact, we only need to look at the Plattsburgh Housing Authority. Look what happened in the past year there. I'm not going to delve into it, but that's a political appointment. And that was a 6-figure salary, almost approaching $200,000. That's a substantial amount of money. What resolution did that have? No, I don't think that's the answer. The answer is working together, updating our city charter, identifying what the problems are, and finding a solution.
So a sizable portion of our student body lives off campus. And quite simply, a lot of the buildings that students live in are not maintained well. And in some cases, they can be hazardous to the residents. For instance, the Couch Street fire that happened just a couple weeks ago. I believe the cause of that fire was faulty wiring within the building. So quite simply, what actions can you take to improve the conditions that are in those buildings that students live in there?
Yeah, there certainly are regulations that we need to review and put in place for any rental property that we find is not up to standard. Now, we also have a building inspector's office that's highly overtaxed. We also have shifted around responsibilities specifically for fire inspection that has moved around to different city offices. But again, the opportunity is for us to take a step back, look at what's logical for our city, look at what's fiscally responsible for our city, and then put those policies in place. I know I talk a lot about leveraging technology to deliver some of our government services, and that's, again, to offset the burden of the current building inspector. How can we leverage technology to make that person's job easier, frees up some of their time as well? We have seen in the mayor's budget come out that there's what looks like money allocated for a dedicated IT department. It's my expertise, so I would leverage that department to really push on consolidating some of these services, finding opportunities for delivering those services more effectively in both time and cost, as well as training up staff, training up our city workers in new technology, and that's really developing their skills as well. But again, with an overstaffed, or should say understaffed and overworked building inspector's office, and the amount of college housing that we have, as well as not very clear guidelines that rental property owners, as well as you, the public, are understanding, there's room to grow, and that's where I would focus.
Thank you. Mr. Tiffer.
Sure. There's a few things that I want to touch on this issue. In terms of finding efficiencies in our community, the IT department has always existed. It's just been in the police department. We just merely moved that department out of the police budget and made it its own entity. Because in the future, obviously, that is going to be an important department. So that's really what we did. It's just been a reallocation of funds. That department's always existed. And in terms of integrating technology into our city, we've just finished completing, replacing all our meters throughout the city. They send out a signal. Our meter readers now just have to drive down a block and all the signal gets sent to them. So we've been integrating those technologies throughout our departments. Specifically speaking about student housing, I think one thing that we really need to take a look at is the lack of adequate, affordable housing in our community. Our community development office actually has grant programs or low interest loan / grant programs through HUD to create affordable housing. And those are things that we can take advantage of. Those are things that can help make some of our old stock housing safer. Things that we need to work on. Plattsburgh State and the City of Plattsburgh actually they commissioned a study. This was 2007, 2006, that identified some of the things that we can implement to make Court Street, Brinkerhoff, and a lot of those off-campus neighborhoods safer. We should look back at that study and see what we haven't implemented, because there are things that we haven't implemented. There are things that can make those communities and those neighborhoods safer. Those are things that we have to do. The studies have already been done. Let's start implementing some of those things. And then overall in our city, it's not just these neighborhoods. There are other neighborhoods in our community that have some dangerous housing, have hazards. I think of Upper Route 9. It's unfortunate that we're trying to do things, but we're limited in the amount of enforcement that we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Kalman.
Well, the issue of particularly safe housing is a critical one. We are currently using the New York State building codes, and there are grandfather provisions in there that mean that buildings that existed prior to the passage of this code don't have to be brought up to code. That's not good enough. We have to do something else. We have to find ways to take properties that are technically inhabitable and make them actually inhabitable. And I'm not exactly sure how that works. I mean, I've had some conversations with the building inspector and with the corporation council about what our authority can be, and it's a really difficult area to get into, but it absolutely has to happen. And there may be some simple things that we can add to our code that will make a difference. Couch Street is a very good example. Perhaps we couldn't make them rewire the house, although it wasn't really faulty wiring. It was a wiring started, but it wasn't faulty wiring. Maybe we could have made them rewire the house, but you know, a simpler way to deal with that problem might have been, we might have made them put a sprinkler system in the hallway, in the staircase. That's not that big a deal. That can happen. But there's some other issues that are out there. And I'm not sure if this is landlord responsibility more than it is city responsibility. We've got students who do things, and the Couch Street building's a good example, who like to have parties and don't like to be visited by the police for noise ordinances. So they stack mattresses against the doors and windows. When the firemen went into that building, they couldn't believe the amount of fuel that was stacked up against the means of egress. Those things cannot be allowed to happen. We've got to find a way to prevent that from happening. And that is the kind of thing that will save lives, and it's the kind of things that will make, in particular, students' lives here a whole lot more rewarding than you know, even if you're not damaged in a fire. And we had one person who was brutally damaged. Your life is changed forever when you have to go through one of these things. And so, yeah, we need to work very hard on our building code, and we need to find ways to really stop the tragedies. There's just no question about it.
Thank you. Questions now from our audience. What is your plan to encourage intermunicipal cooperation and collaboration? Mr. Tipper, we start with you.
Sure. I think it really starts with having an open line of communication. I know all three of us have been in regular communications with Bernie Bassett, and that's something that we need to start working on. The success of the town is as important as the success of the city. Economics are regional. We have to have our whole region working together towards mutual goals. So I think one of the things that we need to do, and as I said, we do have some money allocated towards this, is creating a regional master plan, identifying these goals that will help both the town and the city and our region, and work towards those things. Also, one of the things that we need to start identifying is the resources that we have that we can share. The town of Plattsburgh is exploring new water reservoirs. They're drilling to have more water. 2 years ago, they actually had a water shortage during the summer. We have ample water, ample, reliable, clean. We should be leveraging that and having them purchase the water from us. Why are they wasting their time drilling for more water when we have water? Our sewage treatment plant, we actually do have a contract with them to utilize our sewage treatment plant on Dock Street. That's an example of a shared service. But there's more. There's absolutely more opportunities that we can have. And it starts with a master plan. It starts with communicating with them on a regular basis and really fixing and bridging the relationship that was damaged for 7 years. We need to change that. We need to really establish a strong relationship so that when the town needs something, they can pick up the phone and they can call me anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Callen.
Actually, when the town needs something, often they do call. And when the city needs something, often they do call. It's happening mostly at the department level. The department heads work together very, very nicely. What's missing is real cooperation at the top. And you're right, we've all spoken to the supervisor, we've all talked about ways to make the things different, but I think the key in this is we have to make it personal. I was asked a question earlier today about how do I feel about the situation in Washington, and that's ridiculous. It doesn't happen here because the voters get to see you in the grocery store, and they get to see you on the street, and they get to see you, every day. They can come to your house, they can talk to you, they know you're home. That's the kind of personal government that we have to have. We need to have the same kind of personal relationships at the board level between the town and the city council. I mean, we should be sitting down frequently. We should be having a picnic. We should go bowling. We should, just do people things so that when a situation comes up, when a question arises, we don't fight it out in the newspaper. We don't, start calling people names. We just make the phone call, or maybe you were coming to my house that night anyway, and just sit down and talk about things. That's important. Listen, we are a city. We have all the city problems that are out there, but we're a city that we're a personal city, and we're a personal town. And this is a really human thing. And we just need to, put the titles away, put all the battles away, and just talk to each other as people. That works. Out of that, you'll get all the cooperation you ever need, because that's actually what's going on with our department heads. They are cooperating. Steve Peters once said that they got fields, we got people, so let's find a way to work together. And so, we do things like that. And so those are the kinds of things we just need to expand.
Can't really diverge on the answers here. I think we're all in agreement that there's been a strain in relationship with the current city hall, and there hasn't been much forward movement to push the mayor into that direction in terms of partnership. The problem then becomes is how do you go then back to the town and say, hey, look, let's all sit down. Very open to it. He's very receptive to having us sit down and working out these types of services. And it is an opportunity for us to look at all of the services that we provide and all of the services that they provide so we can enhance our region. We are neighbors. We are neighbors, and it's nonsense to fight with your neighbor. So how do you get with your neighbor to make your neighborhood better? It really is that direct line of communication. And it goes beyond the town of Plattsburgh. If we're talking about creating the city of Plattsburgh as the cultural and economic hub of the North Country, we really want to go beyond the town. We want to go out to Burlington. We want to go out to Montreal. We want to go to Point South. That is an opportunity for us to fulfill on what's possible here beyond just sharing services between the town and the city. We really want to grow. We want to be the leader in the North Country.
Thank you. Next question. And Mr. Rosenquist, we start with you on this one. Will you seek input from local citizens before embarking on major projects during their implementation and after? And please say how.
Well, there certainly is the appropriate engagement of our electorate that, you know, if we're going to look at changing major infrastructure, changing major operations in our city government, of course, that's what you have to do as an elected official. On the other hand, they've elected you and empowered you to make those decisions without having to go back every single time to double check. That's where the trust comes in, and that's why they voted you into office. I don't see that there's a lot of need. Again, it just depends on the situation. I don't think there's a lot of need to go back to check every single time, hey, we're going to repave South Catherine. Are y'all okay with that? I think that everybody would be okay with that. Are we going to put a mall and 20 shopping centers and a 20-foot tower on our city beach? I think people might want to contribute to that conversation a bit, and that, yes, we would want to go out and check. We'd want to ask. I mean, that's the appropriate thing to do. But again, there's some things that are appropriate, yes. There's some things that aren't. I would look at leveraging a lot of social media and internet as well as opportunities for people to engage with me. And I'm available. I'd be on the radio every week or every other week, and I'd be, my phone number is plastered everywhere, and that's how I like to talk to people. And I don't see any issue with engaging with people to gauge their interest in what kinds of projects that they're interested in and might impact them. So. The opportunity for the mayor's office is to become a partner with everyone. That includes all the people that are mad that the hedges are grown over their sidewalk. That's important to people. It's humorous, but again, that's what's important to us. That's what's important to us as neighbors. That's what's important for us is to keep our streets and our neighborhoods beautiful.
Mr. Calvin, next please.
I'm next. Okay. We've been going around and around like this. You got me out of order. You know, Tom, you shaking me up here. That's good. That's good. Public engagement is a really interesting question. I mean, when we do, I think I agree that in delivering our essential services, the kinds of things that you elect us to do, you know, water, sewer, electric, public safety, streets, those kinds of things, yeah, that's what the elections are for. You're going to elect some people who are going to do those things for you. But when it comes to the particular things, the unusual things, you know, we almost always have to have a public hearing. But, you know, in the 7 years I've been there, if there's been 50 people in total at all the public hearings I've ever been to, I'd be surprised. So that's broken. And now, yeah, we're meeting the requirements of the law, but we've got to take a much bigger step beyond that. The first thing I think we need to do is we need to be looking at the natural gathering places. The groups, Vision to Action is one example. The folks who are in first weekends, the folks who are on the Strategic Tourism Committee, make them come to us and say, hey, look, you know, we're considering putting this mall that Chris wants to put up. Yeah. But let them be a conduit for information, because they're also out in the community like we are. And I think that we need to figure out a way to encourage more people to come to see us. And they've got to come to see us, as I say, both in the formal, to meet requirements, and in the informal, which is the phone calls to the office, phone calls to the house, the conversation in the grocery store. Those are the kinds of things that you really got to take into account. But we've also got to be sure that we're welcoming. And, you know, coming into City Hall to go to the Common Council chambers in a formal setting to speak at a public hearing, maybe not the friendliest way to get comment. So yeah, we really have to expand that, because there are some big decisions that get made, and there are things that are going to affect a lot of people's lives, and we need to really encourage more communication.
Sure. As Mr. Calnon said, it's true. I think 50 is on the high end. Very few people come to those forums. Very few people, I think, even realize that we're having them. And that's a problem. We need to educate the public. We need to give them more opportunities to be more involved. Not that we aren't involving them now, but we should be going above and beyond that, having them be engaged, having them be a part of the conversation. One of the things that when I was talking to someone that works in the city, she had mentioned, why don't we have monthly forums for the mayor? You know, ask the mayor, meet the mayor. That's something that we should do. The public should want to come and talk to me, ask me questions. They should want to know. Obviously, look at this room. It's packed. People are interested. People want to know what's going on in their community. It's not about the small things. It's not about the garbage pickup. It's not about repaving. You expect those things to be done, and that's what we should be doing. But it's about our waterfront. It's about our downtown development. It's about our vision for the future. Those are things you're interested in, and those are things that you need opportunities to have an update on so that you know what's going on. You shouldn't just rely on the newspaper or the radio or other means to get that information. We should be actively engaging you, actively giving you an opportunity to come to City Hall, come to the library, come to other common meeting places, and have an opportunity to meet us. One of the things that, as I'm talking to some of the candidates for the wards, the ward forums are coming to fruition. This is something that they want to do. They want to inform their constituents that what's going on, what are the projects that are going on, what are the new road work or some of the other projects that affect their neighborhood, so that they're engaged, so the public knows who to go to for information, so they know what's going on. I think that's really important.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We have a number of questions having to do with taxes, having to do with people struggling to make ends meet. So we, instead of asking all of them, we will consolidate them. This audience member sums it up. Property taxes are out of control. How do you balance that and maintain services? And we're going to go right down the line. Mr. Chipper, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think one of the problems that our city has is the over-reliance on our homeowners for the sole revenue of our city. We do have other revenue streams, but the bulk of it comes from our taxes. And we need to change that. We need to identify new revenue sources. And I had mentioned tourism. We have the tourists here. They're a captive audience. They come to our airport. They go up Route 3. How do we get them to stay here? How do we make this into a destination for them to stay, spend more money here, make more investments here? That's what we really need to identify. We need to identify different revenue sources, particularly with the tax cap. We can only do so much without going over that tax cap. And this council has worked very hard to ensure that we don't go over that tax cap. But at some point, it inhibits our ability to pay our bills. So we have to identify different revenue sources. We have to be creative and figure out what inefficiencies are in the departments and how can these departments shift into finding new revenue streams, finding ways that those departments can make revenue for the city. I think that's really critical.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
We're a highly taxed city and a highly taxed state. That's a real problem for us. And it's a problem that we struggle with. And there's only one thing that we can do. We will live underneath the tax cap. We will not exceed the tax cap. And the voters need to recognize that services may have to be adjusted when that happens. That's a scary thing. But if you know what you're doing and you manage the budgets, the way we've managed the budget since I got on the council in 2007, you can change the mindset. There's a certain amount of our property value or our wealth, if you will, that is acceptable to fund our government. That's our tax rate. That should never go up. You know, if your property is worth more, okay, you're going to pay a little more taxes. Well, that's okay. But the rate should never climb. I said when I joined the council that when I left, I wanted to be sure that the tax rate was lower or equal to it was when I got there. We're not there yet. We're still 4% higher than we were when I first got here. But that's better than the 93% that we were higher in 2007 over 2000. Taxes nearly doubled in 7 years, And in the last 7 years, the tax rate is going to have risen for under 4%. So it can be managed, but it has to be managed by someone who has the ability to do so. I've been the mayor pro tem for the last 6 years. I've been the council's budget officer, and I have been the primary person behind the council deliberations. For 6 of those 7 years, I was intimately involved in helping the mayor, along with Councilor Jackson on our budget committee, in drafting his. So I have the experience that's necessary, and I will manage the funds so that we keep our tax rate from growing.
Yes, it's interesting to say you're not going to raise taxes. No, you can't raise taxes. Yes, we're going to stay under the tax cap, and that's true. But what's the offset of that? You stay under the tax cap to raise the cost of services. What's the difference? There's not much. It's just you're offsetting revenue from one stream to another. And it's still going to burden the taxpayer who has to consume those services. The opportunity, though, is to find a way to leverage technology, leverage innovation, to deliver our government services more effectively in both time and cost. And then take that savings and invest it. Invest it in projects that are going to make money. Invest it in festivals. Festivals alone generate $2 to $4 million in revenue. Yes, they cost money, but at the end of the day, they also make money. Arts and entertainment. Let's invest in art and entertainment. Let's engage with Rhoda. Let's engage with the Art Center. Let's find opportunities that we can create them, put them into the fold, and have them and us as a city partner to attract people here. Now, ticket sales at the Strand and other events downtown, yes, they're an opportunity for us to generate revenue, but on the flip side of that is people coming to our downtown to spend time downtown, to shop at our stores, to buy food, go out to a nice dinner, and have that be the opportunity for us to focus on generating revenue, as well as waterfront development. Let's find opportunities, both the short-term and the long-term opportunities for generating revenue outside of our tax base or outside of the tax rate. Those are opportunities when we start to invest in our infrastructure, invest in these community groups, and invest in these events. Those are opportunities for us to increase our tax base. That in turn will keep us under the tax cap. That in turn will lower the tax rate, and also an opportunity to go out and find high-tech jobs, partner with SUNY to bring these folks here. We have a trained workforce coming out of our SUNY schools. Let's leverage them and keep them here by finding those high-tech, living wage jobs to come to Plattsburgh.
All right, let's pick up a little bit on what you were just talking about, Mr. Rosenquist, downtown. The community has invested $4 million into the Strand Theater. What role do you see it playing in the city's economic development? And Mr. Callan, we begin with you.
Oh, I think it's critical. I think this is a really watershed moment. And I got to tell you, most of you don't know, but my hobby all my life has been community theater. I can't wait to get on that stage. I'm telling you, I read a proclamation at the Sweet Adelines concert the other day, then I stood there in the wings for a while, and I just said, I just want to get out there, you know. Listen, this is the focal point of our downtown at this point. This is the cultural focal point. This has the opportunity of really setting the theme for downtown. I mean, we need to, this is what we need to work around. We need to rebuild our downtown around the Strand Theater. There's just absolutely no doubt about it in my mind. It is a marvelous structure, and it is huge. I mean, the events that we could host there, the indoor festivals, if you will, really are limitless. And I'm so excited, and I'm so glad that we're approaching. Of course, a project like that's never really finished, but we're getting really close to being finished with this phase of it. So yeah, I think this is the signature moment for Plattsburgh, I think.
Yeah, the Strand certainly is the beacon for our downtowns in terms of art and culture. My wife's a playwright, so I better say the right thing when it comes to theater here. But yes, arts and culture, theater, and entertainment is got to be a focal point for our downtown and bringing people downtown. The Strand has been one of the most exciting things that have happened in our downtown for quite some time. And for us to leverage it is essential. However, there has got to be some partnerships going on. There's got to be grants that the city is also helping fund these efforts, rather than one or two people doing a lot of hard work, and thank God for those people, but it's just not enough. It's just not enough. We have to look beyond just those two people. We've got to look beyond as a community. How do we get a community together up underneath these efforts? That starts with City Hall. That starts at the top. That's leadership. And when we look at what the role of a community development office is, that is their role, is to find those opportunities, to find those grants, to find the volunteers and be the central source for volunteers coming into the city looking for opportunities to make a difference. Again, we have the Strand, yes, but if it's only going to be one or two people moving these things forward, just like a lot of efforts in our city, it's going to peter out. We need support. We need lots of support for these folks, and that comes from City Hall.
Mr. Tiffer.
Sure. Specifically speaking about support for the Strand Theater, that was actually a priority project for our city for the last 2 years in the North Country Economic Regional Development Corporation. In fact, they were awarded 2 grants, 2 substantial grants that helped finish and see what the Strand is at this point. Without those grants, the Strand would not be at the point it is now, almost at the pinnacle of finishing. So there is support. There's absolutely support regionally for this theater. I think that this is, as my counterparts had said, it should be the focal point of our redevelopment downtown. I think of another region, Schenectady, Proctor's Theater, and that has really been a boom for that downtown area. The same thing can happen here. 8 years ago, an idea to create an arts corridor to connect the Strand Theater down to our waterfront. That was brought up through the Community Development Office. That's something that I support and I want to continue. This is something that we have to work on. We have to connect our downtown with our waterfront. They're so close to each other, and create that corridor and that hub of activity that is essential for a thriving and a vibrant downtown. And that's what we should be doing. I do like to point out, although I have to take his word, Mr. Conlon says he supports the Strand Theater. I just find it surprising because in 2007, he voted against giving the federal building to North Country Center for the Arts. So it's very difficult for me to believe that he supports that, voting against that.
All right, gentlemen, you have for one last question? Sure. Pushing 8:30, but let's do one last question. Do you support the concept of complete streets? Do you support reconfiguring existing streets like Route 9 North Margaret Street to better accommodate bicyclists and placing more of an emphasis on making city streets more accessible to bikers and walkers to promote a healthier lifestyle as well as an economic draw for bike tours and tourists? And Mr. Rosenquist, we begin with you for this final question.
Yes. I do, absolutely. And, we talk about transportation, we talk about usable streets. Those are economic drivers. Again, usable streets, people could get around in our city easily and safely, walking, biking, and driving. All 3 modes of transportation. When we focus on the ability for our population and our visitors to easily move around our city and safely move around our city, it creates opportunities for our businesses. It creates opportunities for our residents to interact better. It's not just enough to have more bike lanes. We also have to have the infrastructure like bike racks. Those are necessary. And we do see community groups and grassroots efforts pushing these things upwards to City Hall. Rather than City Hall looking at, hey, complete streets is going to be the next generation of transportation infrastructure that we're going to see over the next 20, 30 years. Why have grassroots groups do it versus having the city lead the way, similar to how the town of Plattsburgh is leading the way? And again, having a city hall that's partnering directly with groups like PASS, and I've talked with them, as has Mr. Tiffer, but getting with them and saying, how can we best support you? How can we best support you? And understanding that this project is part of a bigger whole. This project is part of what we want to do on Northern Market Street. It's part of what we want to do on Broad Street. It's part of what we want to do downtown, is to have our streets easily accessible, biking, walking, and driving, and having our businesses thrive along these corridors. But not only that, it's not so insular to just the city of Plattsburgh, but also working with the town of Plattsburgh to coordinate efforts between shared roads. That's integral as well.
Mr. Tiffer.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I'm completely in support of it. In fact, I'm on the past video. If you go on YouTube, I am prominently displayed in that video because I believe in it. It's something that I've, as a councilman, as a planning board member, as a resident, it's something that I always knew was important to create safe routes for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for cars. It's safety for vehicles as well. Sometimes, because we're such a car-centric society, and this is nationwide, we forget that there are other modes of transportation. Cycling is not just recreational. It's a mode of transportation. Walking is important. It's vital. It's a way to get from one place to the other. We need to identify those areas in our city that we're lacking in connectivity. You know, we do have great bike trails, but they don't connect. There's no endpoints. There's no continuation. Those are things that we have to look into. How do we connect from one neighborhood to the other? Our community is so small that it should be very easy for us to go from any neighborhood to another biking. We shouldn't be having to go through multiple lanes of traffic, you know, putting our lives in danger just to enjoy ourselves, to have a recreational stroll through our city. Bigger cities have identified those things. They've put in, I was in DC 3 years ago, and it was a completely bike and pedestrian friendly community. 6-lane roads with dedicated bike lanes. That's amazing. Why can't we do that? There's no reason we can't do that. It's just identifying the areas where we can implement those infrastructure needs. That's really critical. And North Margaret Street, I think it's absolutely important for us to study the feasibility of making that happen, creating that continuity, creating that connection.
Mr. Kelly.
I agree. I think this is exactly the right idea. I was quoted accurately by my friend Mr. LaTemplio in the paper, but he didn't get everything that I said. He underquoted me. One of the things that I said that day was, in response to some opposition to bike lanes on North Margaret Street. Someone had said, well, what if we develop the beach, and what if we develop business north of the city? Then what are we going to do? And in response to that, I said, it's just paint. We'll find another way. If we have to restore this as a 4-lane highway, we'll find another way for folks to get walking. But that really was the minor part of the issue. The bigger part of the issue is that we need to connect our paths from one end of the city to the other. Every walking, every biking path, there needs to be a network. But there has to be a safe network. Not all streets are appropriate. Several years ago, Councilor Voss wanted to have a bike lane all the way to the end of Beekman Street at Boynton Avenue. And I argued with him tooth and nail, because I said, what are you going to do when the bike gets there? Where are they going to go? That road cannot be widened. There's bad visibility. So I said, you know, you got to back it off a little bit. You got to think about who's in that bike, because it really is the transitions between where there is a lane and where there is no lane that the real danger comes. Sit on the steps of City Hall and watch how many people are going to come ahead, cut short and go through the end of the bike lane. Those are dangerous places. So I'm a huge supporter, but I think that we've got to find some creative ways to deal with some of the limits that we have on some of our city streets. A couple streets that haven't been mentioned. I'm not sure why Court and Brinkerhoff are 2-lane streets. I don't know why there's not a bike lane there. Those are places where we have a lot of bicyclists. You know, I think we need to look at places like that. We need to look at the footbridge that goes across the Saranac River behind the monument, because you know that's a walking bridge right now, but why isn't that also a biking bridge? Why doesn't that join down to the waterfront through the $1 million parking lot? You know, I mean, those are the kinds of things we need to do. We need to be creative. It's not one answer for all, but it is one goal. And the goal is exactly that. We've got to get people walking and biking and finding alternate transportation, because I'll tell you, if you've never campaigned for office, the absolute best thing you can do is just walk around a neighborhood. You actually meet people. You know, maybe your neighbor that you don't know. Those things happen. And the more that we can encourage people to do that, the safer people will feel, and the safer people will be, and the healthier they will feel. And it's absolutely, I'm a huge supporter.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
The Development Corporation, Clinton County, New York, à seulement 45 minutes de Montréal. La société offre des sites industriels de premier plan déjà prêts pour un aménagement ou l'excavation, une forte main-d'œuvre et plusieurs options de financement. Découvrez les possibilités.